Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Köring. I'm the head of the Economist Group's World Ocean Initiative. Happy World Oceans Day. We're very excited to welcome you today to the latest World Ocean Summit Insight Hour on the question, if you could invest $1 billion in one ocean solution, what would it be and why? Today's webinar is part of a series that the World Ocean Initiative is putting together for our highly engaged audience of ocean stakeholders, including business, government, civil society. Today's webinar is sponsored by Blancpain. There are opportunities to sponsor future webinars. You can get in touch with my colleague Tatiana. You can see the details on your screen to inquire about sponsorship opportunities in the future. Today, we are also launching a new report. We're very excited about that because it's World Oceans Day, and we're launching a new report on the business challenges and opportunities of building a sustainable ocean economy by 2030. So it's a forward-looking piece with interviews with 38 ocean stakeholders. So you can actually read the latest report. You can click on the banner that you can see on your screen to go to the landing page for the report and download it there. And the next webinar will be on tackling marine plastic pollution and will take place this coming Wednesday. So we have a lot of exciting activity going on this week. So this will be this Wednesday, June the 10th. You can also see the details on your screen for that webinar. And these webinars are taking place in the run-up to the upcoming World Ocean Summit and Expo 2021 that will take place in Lisbon, Portugal on March the 2nd to the 4th next year. And we're very excited about that already. The World Ocean Summit, as you know, is the premier global event on the world ocean. It will run for the 8th time in 2021. It will increase in size, it will increase in focus from previous years. There will be a large-scale agenda that will feature 250 speakers with a focus on achieving and accelerating the sustainable ocean economy. And also the audience size will increase to around 2,000 participants. So we're very excited to have this event coming up next year. We will retain the focus on high-level conversation, as we have always done in the World Ocean Summit and policy making as well in the plenary sessions. This is really designed to seek solutions to accelerate appropriate action, but we're also expanding our agenda to deliver industry-focused sessions as well along 6 tracks. So these 6 tracks are aquaculture, fishing, energy, plastics, shipping, and tourism as well. So we have extended our reach and the depth of the coverage as well to these industry-focused sessions. And the central feature, a new central feature for next year, would also be a solution-focused expo. So we're very excited to have the event coming up next year. You can see the details on your screen. You can pre-register already. We look forward to welcome you in Lisbon next year. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. So first of all, please familiarize yourself with the webinar platform. There's a Q&A function as well for questions for our panelists. You can see the information on related events and resources you will find in the screen in front of you. So there's the media player where you can see today's panelists. There's a Q&A where you can ask questions throughout the webinar to any of the panelists. There's a resource list as well. It includes a link to the Protect Us Ocean series, because we're very excited that today we will show you the latest film in the Protect Us series, sponsored by Blancpain. We have our WOI newsletter and also relevant articles on issues related to ocean protection and investment. You will also find the links to our upcoming webinars, as I mentioned, at our main event in Lisbon. So we're very excited to kick off today's conversation. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. So first of all, we have Peter Thompson, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean. Then we have Alexandra Cousteau. She is a filmmaker, environmental activist, and senior advisor at Oceana. And we have Maria Damanaki. She is the Global Ambassador for Oceans at the Nature Conservancy. So for today's webinar, we will, of course, look at the question of ocean investment. We'll first have an introduction by Peter Thompson. He will discuss the importance of investment in the ocean, highlighted again by the theme of this year's World Oceans Day, which is innovation for a sustainable ocean. He will introduce the film, giving his view on why now more than ever careful consideration must be given to how and where to invest in a sustainable ocean. And we will then have an opportunity to view the latest film in the Protect Us Ocean series, in which we asked 5 leading thinkers on ocean conservation, including Sir David Attenborough, the question: if you could invest $1 billion in one ocean solution, what would it be and why? The film also brings back some of the previous protectors that we had in our ocean series, Protectors Ocean series, and we asked them about their priorities for investment in the ocean. And then we will have a panel discussion with Maria and Alexandra, followed by a Q&A. So please send your questions for the later Q&A session. So without further ado, I would like to ask Peter Thompson for his introductory words. Peter?
Thank you, Martin. And to all of you out there, happy Oceans Day. Thanks very much to the Economist's World Ocean Initiative for putting this on today. Greetings to everyone in cyberspace, and whatever your circumstances, I hope that you and your families are all safe and well. You know, this morning I was up in Stockholm delivering a speech at their World Ocean Day celebrations, and I told them I had to bid adieu and hop onto my magic carpet so I could whiz down here to speak. I could whiz down to speak in Paris at the UNESCO Ocean Literacy Summit. And from there, I had to go across to New York for the World Ocean Day celebrations, and then back here to London for this panel. So the day will draw to a close when I've completed a webinar with the Pacific Island Forum based out of Fiji. You know, all of this travel, zero carbon emitted. This is the new world, folks, and there are obviously some big benefits to it. Many of you will have participated last week at the virtual ocean dialogues organized by the Friends of Ocean Action and the World Economic Forum. The global outreach of those dialogues was quite astounding to me. Over 600,000 viewers across all platforms for the main sessions of the dialogues. We're still gathering the positive lessons learned from the virtual ocean dialogues, but I, for one, foresee future conferences as hybrid models that, as well as accommodating actual attendees, incorporate all the experiences of virtual participation that we're learning from COVID-19's imposition of self-isolation. But I want to reaffirm to you all that the next UN Ocean Conference will be held in Lisbon, and that the governments of Portugal and Kenya are determined to host a vibrant conference, and that, like the first UN Ocean Conference, the Lisbon Conference will be another global game changer for ocean action. In Lisbon's case, rather than awareness of the need for ocean action, it will be the formulation of the solutions and partnerships that will see us through to achieving SDG 14 by 2030. And it'll do that by focusing on science and innovation. Need I say it? Human well-being, the ocean, and climate are inextricably linked. And it has to be said and again that to our mutual detriment, for too long, economic, social, and political systems have taken the ocean's vital ecosystems for granted. Those days hopefully are over. We've come to our senses with universal agreement to augment SDG 14, the UN Sustainable Development Goal of conserving and sustainably using the ocean's resources. Our task over the next 10 years is to ensure we repay our immense debt to the ocean by faithfully implementing the goal's 10 targets. Make no mistake, the decade ahead will be witness to whether or not we prevail in our struggle to ensure the ocean retains its coral, its myriad of ecosystems, its oxygen levels, and the integrity of its genetic material, so that we can continue to exist on a healthy planet. We have work to do. Investment in protection of the ocean demands that we cease harmful fishing practices, eradicate illegal fishing, prohibit the subsidies that contribute to overcapacity of fishing fleets, and that we end overfishing through better management and enforcement. It demands that we stop polluting the ocean, in particular with our plastic waste.
$1 million to spend on the ocean.
Actually, $1 billion, hypothetically speaking. This was the question The Economist put to 5 of the world's leading thinkers.
Investment in marine protected areas is key. We still have a chance of meeting SDG 14.5's target of conserving 10% of coastal and marine areas by the end of 2020, particularly if CAMLA, the treaty body that oversees Antarctica and its waters, institutes this year the 3 great marine protected areas currently under consideration. And it's been heartening to witness the growing support from countries big and small for the proposal to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. I'm proud as a Fijian to know that my country is committed to 30 by 30, and that it is in the vanguard of those calling for all countries with EEZs to institute comprehensive marine spatial plans therein by 2030. I join with others in calling for the 30 by 30 target being incorporated into the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, and for member states of the United Nations to include robust marine protection in their conclusion of an effective and universal treaty on marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdictions. I'd like to delve into the sustainable blue economy and how it will look after us all if we invest wisely in it. But I defer now to the other panelists and hand the microphone back to you, Martin. Thank you for this time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Peter, for highlighting the importance of investment in our ocean and mentioning some of the crucial steps that have to be taken. I mean, towards SDG 14, but also you mentioned 30 by 30, and you mentioned some of the initiatives on illegal fishing and so on, and the importance of marine protected areas. So it's really important that we channel this investment into the right solutions. So this is now the time really to watch the video on what some other thinkers as well think. And actually, Peter, you're also on that video. There are 4 other leading thinkers that we asked the question: if you could invest $1 billion in one ocean solution, what would it be and why? So without further ado, please play the video. It's going to be about 12 minutes.
$1 million to spend on the ocean.
Actually, $1 billion, hypothetically speaking. This was the question The Economist put to 5 of the world's leading thinkers in ocean conservation.
$1 billion.
So $1 billion.
$1 billion.
$1 billion doesn't go very far these days.
For 7 decades, Sir David Attenborough has brought the natural world into people's homes. His groundbreaking television series, Blue Planet, raised global awareness of mankind's impact on the ocean. So how would Sir David spend that $1 billion?
And I would spend a bit of it on trying to persuade the nations of the world that these are the property of humanity as a whole, and had to be dealt with by human beings getting together and agreeing on a policy to look after the precious things of the ocean.
Countries have long disputed how the ocean should be governed, but there is a framework in place. Each coastal nation governs the water that extends 12 nautical miles from its shore, known as its territorial sea. For up to 200 nautical miles out, coastal nations have their own exclusive economic zones, where they have sovereign rights to resources like fish, oil, and minerals. Beyond that, it's the high seas, a vast expanse of water owned at once by everyone and no one. A basic law of the sea does exist, and a tangle of overlapping authorities, often with conflicting mandates, oversees particular activities, and little consequence for nations that don't abide by it. Negotiations are underway for a new treaty to protect the biodiversity of the high seas. But to make it effective, it will need to have more teeth than its predecessors. Sir David's $1 billion could be spent on funding and demonstrating the value of multinational enforcement schemes. Yet any negotiations over the high seas face a major stumbling block: fishing rights.
If I have $1 billion, I will establish no-take zones.
Zafer Kizikaya is a conservationist from Turkey.
The main problem right now is the resource management. We overexploited many things.
As a result of unsustainable fishing practices, over a third of the world's fish stocks have collapsed. Mr. Kizilkaya successfully convinced his government to create 3,000 hectares where fishing isn't allowed, otherwise known as no-take zones.
This is the most major spawning and nursery area. So that's why we have to keep this area safe from all kinds of fishing pressure. amateur, professional, any kind.
In the 10 years since Mr. Kizilkaya's no-take zone has been in place, marine biomass has increased by 800%. But there's a problem.
Less than 1% of the whole ocean surface is no fishing zone. And within this 1%, probably half of them is not well enforced.
Creating no-take zones is one thing. Policing them is another.
Putting the marine protected areas on the paper as no fishing zone doesn't mean anything. Do we have rangers? Do we have boats? Do we have people protecting these areas from any illegal activity?
Illegal, unreported or unregulated fishing accounts for 1 in every 5 fish taken from the sea. And this is where Zafer Kizilkaya would spend his $1 billion.
Technology could easily help the satellite technology or high-tech drones which can fly in really long distances. It is the most time-consuming, money-consuming part of marine conservation. That's where we need this $1 billion.
But to convince the international community to create more marine protected areas requires evidence, and that means more science.
So what would I do with $1 billion? As scientists, it may be a bit obvious that I would want to invest it in science. We do have large gaps in our knowledge that need to be filled.
Dr. Suzanne Lockhart is a marine biologist with a particular interest in cold water coral.
It may seem that we know a lot about the ocean, but it is the tip of the iceberg of what we need to know in order to keep our ocean healthy.
Just 2 years ago, Dr. Lockhart became the first person to ever explore the floor of Antarctica's Weddell Sea.
Heading 050, 1000
Antarctica has some of the densest and most diverse seabed communities you could ever see.
At 1023, over.
Many thought these waters were too deep and too cold to support much life. But on this expedition, her team uncovered vast coral reefs teeming with marine life.
So you've got sea stars, bishop star.
We can learn so much from a 1,000-year-old coral colony.
Dr. Lockhart's research has been used as the basis for a proposal to create the world's biggest marine protected area, 1 million square miles in the Antarctic. With an extra $1 billion, Dr. Lockhart believes scientific research could help to protect much more of the ocean.
There will always be those countries that block consensus because they claim a lack of knowledge. So if we can go into those remote areas and collect evidence, then it makes it very hard for them to dispute the fact that we need protections.
The ocean is under threat as a result of human activity. Could one way of protecting it focus on how people live on land?
I'd spend $1 billion on batteries.
Doug Macaulay is a professor of marine biology at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
I know it's a little bit strange for a marine biologist to suggest batteries, but indeed, that's precisely where I put my investment.
Professor Macaulay has pioneered the use of technology in the conservation of some of the world's most endangered marine species.
The challenge for a marine biologist is that you're doing all these things and you must do these things and they matter. And yet looming behind you is this master threat to the oceans, climate change.
Climate change is causing the ocean to overheat, increasing the level of acidity and reducing the oxygen content of the water.
So what could batteries do to help us fight climate change? They're essentially the most important ingredient in a low-carbon future. And it's because they are the storehouses for this low-carbon energy that we need to capture.
The world relies on lithium-ion batteries. Green technology is being developed around their use, but this type of battery requires minerals like cobalt, which have a controversial supply chain. To meet the growing demand for batteries, mining companies are turning their attention to the deep sea.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the ocean science community about exactly what ocean mining would do to ocean ecosystems, but I can tell you the uncertainty is about how bad mining will be for our seas, not whether it will be good.
Batteries are essential to reducing CO2 emissions. Professor Macaulay wants radical innovation. To invest the $1 billion in designing powerful next-generation batteries, ones which won't depend on mining the sea.
When we are able to come up with an alternative to a lithium-ion battery, well, then the cost of electric vehicles will come crashing down. The faster we can bring that low-carbon future to us, the more likely it is that we see a reduction in extinction in the oceans and major disruptions to ocean health.
Living in an ocean-obsessed household, Doug's 7-year-old son, Finn, has his thoughts about where he'd spend the money.
I'd put $1 million.
You get $1 billion, actually.
$1 billion to save the vaquita.
The vaquita is a type of porpoise on the brink of extinction. Only 10 individuals still remain in the wild.
I think you should just save them, and then maybe you'd save like 30 other species that need the vaquita for their food chain.
Elected by acclamation.
Peter Thompson is the United Nations Special Envoy for the Ocean.
I'd take that $1 billion and I would direct it into education.
His mission is to galvanize the international community to prioritize ocean conservation.
There's a fundamental disconnect between what we know in ocean science and what majority of the population knows. When you think of things like every second breath of oxygen you take comes from the ocean. I mean, this should be one of the fundamental things that we are learning about in our daily life.
The ocean regulates the planet's climate. It provides the main food source to nearly half the global population and underpins trillions of dollars worth of economic activity worldwide.
If you give people that knowledge, they're going to start making the right decisions. And not just individuals, but communities, governments, and international bodies have to be supplied with the right science.
There is no single solution to the multitude of threats facing the ocean. And it will take more than $1 billion to drive change.
As a man-made disaster is what faces us and what we are having to deal with.
Only through reshaping the way humanity lives and uses the ocean can this vital part of planet Earth be saved. And that will take not just the creativity of individuals, but the collaboration of nations.
People won't care about things that they don't know about and have never seen. And that your first job is to make clear what a wonderful world the natural world is.
I think there are several powerful suggestions in the film about how and where investment in the ocean can have the biggest impact, and some really interesting ones as well, unexpected ones. I would now like to ask our two guests, Alexandra and Maria, about their views on this topic. First of all, I would like to start with Alexandra. So I'd like to ask you that question. If you could invest $1 billion in one ocean solution, what would it be and why? Alexandra?
I think that I would probably focus on fisheries. It's one of the #1 reasons that our oceans are in danger. And at Oceana, we've done a lot of research about how we can transform fisheries for more abundant oceans and all of the benefits that that would bring to communities with food security and livelihoods and just more abundant oceans overall. And with our Save the Oceans, Feed the World initiative, we realized that it's just 28 nations plus the EU that are responsible for the vast majority of fishing activities in the oceans. So if we're able to implement policy initiatives and education and engage the leaders around expanding marine protected areas, reducing bycatch, and implementing science-based quotas, not politically expedient quotas, we can actually restore our fisheries, and we can restore our abundance, and we could feed potentially 1 billion people a day a seafood meal, which has extremely low carbon emissions, doesn't use any arable land or fresh water. So it's a wonderfully healthy source of protein, especially for the world's poor in the developing world. I think to do that, we need to invest heavily in technology for traceability and transparency of the seafood supply chain. One of the things that we worked on with Google and SkyTruth was the Global Fishing Watch, which is able to track fishing boats around the world from satellites. And we've been able to help countries intercept illegal fishing activity in their waters. So this kind of emerging technology is going to allow us to bridge that gap between, fishing activities in the open ocean and those that are trying to police that activity and make sure that it is legal. The nice thing about fishing and implementing new technologies for transparency and traceability is that pretty much all the stakeholders agree that this is necessary, from governments to industrial fishing fleets to consumers to nonprofits. It seems like the only ones that sort of disagree with that idea are the illegal fishermen themselves. So I think that there's a big opportunity there to fast track sustainable seafood supply chains that can restore abundance and give consumers a legal product that is healthy for them and healthy for their communities. And I think that's money well spent.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for highlighting the importance of investing in technology. And you mentioned, interestingly, that there is this broad agreement. And when there is this broad agreement and there is the opportunity to invest, then obviously now we need to make it happen. And thanks for highlighting the importance of transparency and traceability in fishing. So Maria, I'd like to ask you the same question. If you could invest $1 billion in one ocean solution, what would it be and why? I think you're on mute, Maria.
Ocean is a global challenge, and we need a global solution for this. So for the moment, we have seen so many initiatives, but they are fragmented. Every country, every nation takes its own decisions and goes ahead. I think we need a global governance system. So I would give my money to create a global governance system with real teeth that can coordinate nations about their exclusive economic zones and take care of the high seas on the waters beyond the national jurisdiction. What we need here is a global governance system that can give us answers referring to the knowledge, the science we need to have, the management solutions, but also enforcement. So what is happening, and we have seen that through the pandemic, is that usually we have a global challenge and then we have national answers to this global challenge. We need to take decisions at the upper level, and the upper level is difficult. That's why we have to persuade government and nations, but also we have to persuade international bodies like United Nations and others that they have to focus more. Also, we are going to need stakeholders, NGOs, citizens, everybody to be coordinated around that. Everybody wants to make its own, how can I say it, its own territory around the oceans. This is not productive. That's why I would give the money to create a real governance system. I think this is what we need.
Thank you, Maria, for highlighting the need for a global governance system and also the knowledge, science, and enforcement that is really required to go with that. So I'd like to ask the audience now about what they think actually is the kind of the way forward in terms of investment in ocean solutions. So can we have the poll question now, please? The question is about what should be the biggest priority for ocean investment, and we are giving you a couple of choices here, partly inspired, of course, by the answers in the film that we just showed you. Science and technology, education, public awareness, marine protected areas, renewable energy, sustainable seafood, and blue tourism. So please type in your answer, select your top answer. What should be the biggest priority for ocean investment? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to type in your answer, please. This obviously is really about priorities, because obviously, it would be good to be able to invest in all of these. So now it is about what should be the priority. So please type in your answers. And I'm very curious to find out about what the priorities are. For the audience. Could you please push that result live, please? Okay, so great. So we have an interesting result here. It's interestingly evenly distributed for the top 3 there. So science and technology is seen as an important one, but even more so marine protected areas, 28%, and 27% say education, public awareness, and then science and technology, and far less in terms of sustainable seafood, still 16%, but less in renewable energy and blue tourism. Okay, interestingly, so it is marine protected areas. I mean, you mentioned, both of you mentioned marine protected areas. What do you think? Does this confirm your view of the importance of marine protected area? I think you're on mute, Maria.
I'm sorry. So I think this is exactly the case, because marine protected areas can create a network around the planet that can save the oceans and the planet indeed. The real questions here are where we put the marine protected areas, where, how we decide, how we manage them, and then how we can put their enforcement and policy measures. That's why I believe that what is needed is knowledge, is management, is enforcement, and we need innovation and technology. And I can mention here that now we have satellite technologies and electronic monitoring technologies that can help us really go for enforcement and control the marine protected areas. And we have good examples around the world that make it more and more feasible. On the other hand, the plan of this protection is very important. And Peter just mentioned, Peter Thompson, marine special planning. I had some experience as a European Commissioner, and I found out that the marine protected areas in Europe that are there because the scientists told us that we have to put them there made more sense than a marine protected area somewhere on an island or wherever. Because the good planning of the marine protected areas is connected with biodiversity, with fisheries, with everything. So I think that the governance system comes back again. Who decides about that? Who is the decision making? For example, about the marine protected areas in high seas, about the marine protected areas in exclusive economic zones, and how this is all connected. So my point here, Martin, is that we need a holistic approach for ocean, not just fisheries, science, information, technology, enforcement, control, marine special planning. We need a holistic approach and an integrated management control for everything. And this is the idea I would like to promote. The Nature Conservancy has some good results working on that. For example, we have done that in Seychelles, and this made sense. We had a dead swap, we have protected the fisheries, we have created the 30% of the whole exclusive economic zone as a marine protection area, and this is the second biggest in the Indian Ocean. So you can have good results if you're going through this way of integrating ocean management.
Thanks a lot, Maria, for highlighting the importance of this integrated approach and the holistic approach on marine protected areas. Alexandra, would you like to add anything? Does this result confirm what you are thinking about the importance of marine protected areas?
Well, the importance of marine protected areas can't be overstated. And, I think for me, I'm very hopeful that we can achieve 30% marine protected areas by 2030. There's a big initiative pushing that direction. We've seen countries like Canada in the past 5 years just expand their marine protected areas enormously. Chile has done the same, other countries. So the will can be there to do it. And the benefits are huge. I think what we need to remember is that we need to know what we're protecting. Just protecting surface isn't enough. We need to know what we're protecting, the benefits, if it has essential fish habitat or endangered species, if it's a spawning area, and that requires exploration and discovery and film so that we can know what we're protecting and why, and make sure that those places then are interconnected and that everybody understands the benefits. But I feel confident that we can achieve it. And I think that there is a lot of momentum building in that direction, which is really good news because the oceans obviously should be protected and we should be able to find essential habitats around the world up to 30% that are put aside so that the rest of the ocean can be abundant for humans and for the creatures that live there and for restoring that lost abundance that we need to do. And I'd like just to mention that recently there was an article in Nature magazine by Carlos Duarte and Boris Worm and some other world-class marine biologists that affirm that it is possible to restore abundance to the world's oceans by 2050. And that it is economically beneficial to do so. There's these 9 wedges that they talk about. And for every dollar invested, you get about $10 back. So restoring abundance to the world's oceans is, as far as I'm concerned, a mandate for us now. There is no question about whether or not we can do it. There's no question about whether it's good or not for the economy. The only question that remains is whether we will have the political will to create the policies and the changes that are needed and whether or not we can work together as a global community to do that. But it just doesn't seem like there's any other option for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks a lot, Alexandra, for highlighting this need to restore as well, not only to protect, but to restore ocean health. Before we move on to the Q&A, and we have received several really interesting questions from the audience, please continue to type your questions if you have some for Maria or Alexandra or both. I'd like to just briefly ask you about the theme of World Oceans Day today, which is really about the need for innovation. Innovation for a sustainable ocean is the theme of the World Oceans Day today. So what kind of innovations do we need to restore ocean health? I'd like to start with Maria. What kind of innovations do we need? What kind of innovations do you want to see? I think you're unmuted, Maria.
I don't know what's happening. Perhaps my microphone is not doing well. I'm sorry. It's about innovation and technology. But
of course, exactly.
I failed to adjust myself. So what I would like to say is that we need innovation throughout the whole chain of ocean conservation. Knowledge, management, enforcement. And we can have innovation. Just to give you some concrete examples. Alexandra mentioned fisheries. Now we have ideas and in scientific ideas and innovation products that can permit us to have a full picture of the DNA of fish. And having that, the DNA of fish, this is a great contribution to fight against illegal fisheries because we will be able to detect if this fish is coming from where they say it's coming. Then we can have a lot of innovation about management because we have all these algorithms and the big data that can give us an idea of what's happening in the seas in real moment. Who is fishing? How much is taking? What is happening there? Who is taking what from the bottom of the sea? So we can have an idea throughout this big data of what is happening in real time in the ocean, not only the surface, but throughout the column. And then we have enforcement and control, and we have electronic monitoring, with electronic monitoring on the ships, we can do observation and control without people. We don't need people to be on the ship. Electronic monitoring can do that. And together with satellite images, we can have a full picture of what's happening. So there is a lot of innovation that we can take advantage of. So we need the billion for that, of course. We need money, and we also need political will. In order to do that, I think we have to persuade the governments and the investors that there will be profits and results at the end of the day. I would like to fully agree with what Alexandra just said. There is this study, and it is not the only one, that can prove that ocean health and restoration can go hand in hand with human prosperity. So we can fish less and earn more. We can all be happy, people and oceans together. That's why this is important. That's why we now have the weapons to go for this fight. And that's why I'm optimistic about the future, because I believe we can do it. We can use what we have and have good results.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks a lot, Maria, for highlighting, the importance of these, kind of innovations, but also, the need to, think about, why we need to innovate, and it's really about bringing together different stakeholders. And Alexandra, you had also mentioned some of the, the important innovations already. But what would you say are the key innovations you would like to see to restore ocean health?
Well, I'm 44 years old, and in my lifetime, we have lost 50% of blue natural capital in the oceans. 50% of the whales and the fish that swam in the oceans when my grandfather first started exploring them are gone. And so when I talk about and think about innovation, it's not just innovative financing mechanisms or innovative technologies, although those are critical, and I think people are really working hard on that. I also think that we need innovative ways of thinking about our approach, about our solutions, and about the future that we want to create moving forward. We talk a lot about the problems, and we talk a lot about, how bad the problems are, how far away are the problems. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the vision of the future we want to create. And my ski instructor, when I was 8 years old, he would take me up to the top of the bunny slope and point my skis down and say, Alexandra, when you're on your way down the slope, whatever you do, don't look at the trees. Because if you do that, you will ski into the trees. Look at where you want to go. And I think that as a community of practitioners, as a community of investors, of diplomats, of students, we don't spend enough time talking about, well, what specifically do we want to accomplish so that our future is more abundant? We talk a lot about what we don't want to have happen. And I think it's not moving us fast enough in the right direction. So I would challenge everybody to think, is the word sustainable or the word conservation, words that we started using in the 60s when we still had about 90% of our oceans left? Are those words that are really the right words to describe the situation that we're in today and where we want to go? And I would make the argument that using words like restoring abundance, rebuilding marine biodiversity, regenerating ocean health are maybe better words to describe where we want to go and what we need to accomplish and how we want to build our solutions. So I would say, innovating from that perspective as well is really important, being creative and thinking outside the box, because doing what we've always done, but just doing more of it, isn't going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for highlighting the need for innovative thinking and not only innovative doing. Both go really hand in hand. So now let's move on to the questions and answer. We received a lot of interesting questions. Please continue to submit them. There's one here on climate, which is the elephant in the room, really. The immediate threat to humanity is climate. Can the oceans help to restore climate safety by removing more carbon at scale to the deep ocean carbon store? With 1 billion, we could answer this question. What do you think, Maria, about the ability of the ocean to store carbon?
Well, Every second breath we take is coming from the ocean. So the ocean is the lung of the planet. This is the reality. And we have studies that can prove that ocean can absorb up to 30, 40% of the CO2 emissions around the world if it's really healthy. So we know now, the science is there. And we have some very good methods that can restore the ocean in the way that it can absorb CO2 emissions because the ocean now is a little bit tired, if I can say so. We have acidification, we have pollution, we have loss of biodiversity. But if we can bring the ocean back to the healthy state, then it can be 30 to 40% of the solution to the climate change. So this is great. And that's why we need the ocean. And I think that the people can understand that. Everybody was locked down. A lot of people, millions of people were locked down in their houses because of the COVID pandemic. What is happening there with the climate change is something similar, but it happens little by little, more and more slowly. And what makes me really optimistic now is that because of the pandemic, we have so many millions of people who are thinking that perhaps we have to change our way of life. And instead of enjoying consumption and I don't know what else, we have to invest in nature in order to be safe. What happened with the pandemic was just a dress rehearsal of what will happen soon with climate change. And the people, more and more people know that. So let's do something about that. We really need science and governments that can be doers, not just talking as politicians do. Do something. This is what we need now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maria, for highlighting the need to actually do something about climate change. The ocean has a lot of opportunities here. There's a question here on MPA, and I'd like to address that to Alexandra. The Great Barrier Reef is an MPA, but it is dying. To maintain coral, the only solution is to directly tackle climate change, surface ocean temperatures, and ocean acidity. What are the solutions? So this is on the Great Barrier Reef. Alexandra?
What's happening in the Great Barrier Reef is heartbreaking. And, I think there's a certain amount of climate change that's now baked into our system. And the question now is can we prevent the worst from happening? From my perspective, protecting the corals that we have left is of paramount importance. There are new technologies that are being developed to help us restore and rebuild coral reefs faster than ever before. And that's going to be an important part. And I'm not suggesting we do genetic modification, but just helping evolution along by, corals being able to self-select for higher temperatures and helping those to be more abundant on the reef is really important. I think the other thing, though, that we're seeing a lot of success with is seaweed. And there's a whole movement now for seaweed aquaculture. There's companies and nonprofits in the United States like Green Wave that are working on that. There's startups all over the world that are looking at, how do we grow kelp and seaweed both as a feedstock for industrial purposes that is regenerative for the ocean and creates new livelihoods and that can help mitigate climate change in a big way. Kelp can absorb a lot of carbon and bury it in the deep sea. There's ongoing studies about that. So I think that, we need to look at all of these different ecosystems and see which ones can help us leap into the future, leap into a more abundant future, and which technologies we need to use to save things like coral reefs, which are absolutely precious to us. And I think that in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of advances in both of those areas, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks for Alexandra for highlighting the exciting new developments that will be happening in that area and the importance of protecting the Great Barrier Reef and other important areas and coral reefs. There is a question here on the Seychelles, and this is linked as well to what we just discussed as well. You have mentioned Seychelles, which is a great example of a holistic approach to ocean management. This was empowered by Blink from the Debt Swap. with $1 billion US, why not endow the top 50 or 100 most vulnerable ocean nations with a $10 million US trust fund to build people-centered sustainable blue economies within marine spatial planning, include protected areas? Maria, maybe this is something that...
Well, this is a great idea. This is a great idea, and perhaps we have to do that. For the moment, we have an amount which is not as big as 1 billion, but we have some millions, and we had some success through donations and the TEDx help and some other people. So we are working with small island states. This is where we started, and I think we can do that. Through debt swaps, we can move on. And wherever the governments are not willing to do debt swaps, we can have other financial tools. The general idea behind this question, I think, is that we can find ways of impact investment in order to multiply what we are taking from the philanthropists and the philanthropic money, which is not enough. So we need the money of investors, of impact investment and public money in order to make something big at a scale that matters. And yes, we can do that. We can do that in a way that can really make sense, especially for countries that are less privileged, if I can say so, because they don't have the money to go for restoration and conservation work we are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, thanks for highlighting the need to really work together, bringing public and private money together. There's a really interesting question. I think one of the themes of our conversation today was about building this kind of community of people coming together, conservationists, civil society, investors, policymakers. So this question is about that. The global ocean community has not come together in a single platform. We are envisioning a platform of ocean solutionists who bridge the gap between science and citizens and conservationists and citizens. Instead of working in silos, can conservationists come together on a single platform to educate, promote innovation, and advocate? Alexandra, what do you think about this idea?
I think it's a great idea. I think that we need more cross-collaboration between stakeholder groups. I think that having these kinds of platforms where people can learn and engage and commit to new ways of thinking and new solutions, new innovations, new opportunities is a really great idea. I think one of the biggest gaps that we need to address is the lack of social license for a lot of these new ideas. We need to create the enabling conditions to allow these startups and these new ideas to really flourish and take hold and scale quickly. And an example is in the United States, seaweed farmers, when they go to their permitting hearings, the people who are permitting don't even understand what they're trying to do. And oftentimes, seaweed aquaculture gets lumped in with oil and gas. And in fact, sometimes it's even easier to get an oil and gas permit than it is to get a permit to plant kelp offshore. So these enabling conditions, the social license, the consensus building, all of those soft things that are sort of the connective tissue between communities and stakeholder groups that allow us to scale the new ideas and the new thinking is something that we need to focus on. And these kinds of platforms hopefully will provide that solution.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. It's really about building these communities and as well. So thanks. Please keep sending the questions, even if we don't have time to answer them. We will record all of them. So there's a question here about what are the connections between ocean policy and action and the Green New Deal being advocated and increasingly supported for post-COVID economic recovery? I mean, this is a really interesting question, and we did a webinar a couple of weeks ago about the post-COVID economic recovery. Maria, what do you think? What do you think about this Green New Deal? Is it likely? Is it happening? What impact will it have on the ocean?
I think this Green New Deal is a really great European initiative, which is at stake. We don't know how it's going to be implemented and how it's going to end up, but the idea is great. And I think we have to support this European path towards achieving conservation and restoration results. So the Green Deal is important because it can mobilize resources from the European budget, but also resources from banks and private investors towards a green path. And what is important is that after the COVID and what is happening there with the pandemic, there is a decision, a first decision by European institutions that they are going to keep the money for the Green Deal as decided, because there was between us, everybody knows that, so I'm not saying a secret now, but we don't know how it's going to end up. There were some ideas that we can take money from the Green Deal and put in the COVID and health program. This will not be the best solution, as you can imagine. What we really need is to find solutions that can go in the green path, but also at the same time having a boost. This is what we need after the COVID crisis. And I think that the green economy, for example, renewable energy, for example, sustainable fisheries, for example, energy coming from the tides and the currents and whatever, all these new ideas that can go through a green path can promote Green Deal and at the same time give a boost to the economy after the COVID pandemic. It's not easy, but I have to say that this was a huge amount of money that the European institutions promised, and I hope they are going to keep their promise. This is really something that can put Europe in the forehead of the whole fight for a better planet.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Maria, for highlighting the opportunities in the Green New Deal. So we are coming to the last 4 minutes or so. And there's one question here on young people. And I'd like to ask Alexandra, what role for young people in this whole conversation about ocean investment and ocean protection and restoring ocean health? What is the role for young people?
That's a wonderful question. And from my perspective, young people are everything in this conversation. And just speaking personally, I have an 8 and a 4-year-old, and when my daughter is my age, it'll be 2050. And so my big worry and the question that drives me is, will she be the generation of my family to write the obituary for the oceans? Or will she be able to benefit from the restoration of abundance that we put in motion this year in 2020? And I think that the conversation that young people are having increasingly, whether it's Greta Thunberg or others, and in fact, I read an article where the chairman of OPEC was interviewed, and he said that the biggest threat to his industry was a 15-year-old girl from Sweden. And the biggest problem for employee morale was that when they went home in the evenings, their kids were asking them why they were contributing to such a big problem and being part of the destruction of their future. And so I think youth have a real right to start asking us hard questions about what we're doing, what our legacy is, and how we're protecting their future, and have every right to ask us those questions. And I think, for all of us who have children in our lives that we love, whether they're our children, our nieces, our nephews, our godchildren, or just the children of beloved friends, if we want their future to be as abundant as our own childhoods were, I've watched all of the places I loved as a child disappear. I'd like to see them come back, and I'd like to promise those places to my children and other children. And we have 10 years to do it. So an 8-year-old can't do much in the next 10 years to save the oceans, except hold us accountable and get active and start learning about it. But it really is, in the next 10 years, incumbent on us to put in place a plan of action to rebuild our oceans.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for highlighting the importance of the next 10 years. And that's actually a great way of closing, because we actually published a report about the next 10 years and this is building a sustainable ocean economy by 2030. And you can actually download the report and click on the banner. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'd really like to thank the panelists, Alexandra, Maria, as well as, of course, Peter Thompson for his introductory remarks as well, and all the attendees for your questions. So, great question. We couldn't answer all of them. I would also like to thank Blancpain for sponsoring the webinar today. As I mentioned, there are more opportunities to in the future for other webinars. The next one is already happening this Wednesday on marine plastic pollution and how to find solutions to that. The video that we had earlier that we showed earlier on the Protect Us Ocean series is available on the woi.economist.com website in the Protect Us part of that. We will upload that after the webinar today. Then there's also the feedback form under the resources. Please send your feedback on the webinar. We're always keen to improve and make sure these webinars meet your needs as well. And I would also like to thank everyone again for being part of this. And we are looking forward to seeing you the next couple of webinars, as well as in Lisbon next year. Thank you very much, everyone. Please play the closing video.